Sometimes it happens quietly. You start thinking about moments from your past that you hadn't looked at in years. Conversations, choices, people you trusted, versions of yourself you barely recognize now. And suddenly, the meaning of those memories begins to shift. What once felt normal now feels confusing. What once felt like your fault now feels more complicated. You may even find yourself thinking, why didn't I see that back then? Or, how did I accept that for so long? And when these thoughts start appearing, they can feel unsettling. Because it's not just the past you're questioning, it's the story you told yourself about it. This kind of reflection can feel uncomfortable, almost like the ground underneath your memories is moving. The mind likes stability. It prefers when the past stays neatly organized, when the story is simple, when everything fits. But life rarely works that way. As you grow, your perspective grows too. And when perspective changes, the past often looks different through the new lens you've developed. Not because the events themselves changed, but because you did. A lot of people go through this quietly, especially in cultures that move fast. Places where you're expected to keep going, keep improving, keep building your future without spending too much time looking back. There's often an unspoken pressure to just move forward, to stay productive, to avoid overthinking. But the mind doesn't always follow those rules. Sometimes it needs to revisit things, not to trap you there, but to understand them better. When your brain starts re-evaluating the past, it's often a sign that something inside you is reorganizing. Your experiences, your values, your sense of what was fair and what wasn't, what was healthy and what wasn't, what was truly yours and what you simply adapted to at the time. This kind of mental sorting can feel like doubt, but often it's actually clarity forming. And here's something important that many people don't realize. When you look back and wish you had acted differently, that doesn't mean you were weak. It usually means you were working with the awareness you had at that time. Your nervous system was trying to stay safe. Your mind was trying to make sense of the world around you. Sometimes that meant accepting things. Sometimes it meant staying quiet. Sometimes it meant choosing what felt like the least difficult option in that moment. That wasn't failure. That was survival. The human mind is very good at protecting itself, especially when situations feel confusing, emotionally intense, or unpredictable. It filters things. It delays understanding. It prioritizes stability over clarity. And only later, sometimes years later, when you have more emotional distance, more knowledge, and more safety, your perspective begins to open. Suddenly details connect. Patterns become visible. Things that once felt vague start making sense. This can create a strange emotional mix, part insight, part grief, part relief. You might feel compassion for your younger self, but also frustration. You might feel proud of how far you've come, but also sad about what you went through. All of those feelings can exist at the same time. The mind isn't confused when this happens. It's integrating. When perspective shifts, something important is happening. Your internal map of the world is updating. The brain is revising old conclusions. Not to punish you, not to keep you stuck, but to build a clearer understanding moving forward. This process is actually a sign of psychological growth. Even if it doesn't always feel comfortable while it's happening, there's also something else worth noticing. When people start rethinking their past, they sometimes assume they're becoming negative. They worry that they're being unfair, or too critical, or that they're overanalyzing. But often, what's really happening is that your boundaries are becoming clearer. Your understanding of yourself is becoming sharper, and your tolerance for things that once felt normal is changing. That doesn't mean you're rewriting your entire life story. It just means you're seeing more of the picture now. More context, more nuance, more truth. Growth rarely comes from forcing positivity. It often comes from allowing honest reflection. And when the mind finally has permission to look at things clearly, it often becomes calmer, because confusion is exhausting. Unanswered questions take energy. Ambiguity creates tension inside the nervous system. Clarity, even when it's complex, usually brings a quiet kind of relief. You might start noticing something subtle. The past stops feeling like a heavy weight and begins to feel more like information. Something you learned from, something that shaped you, but something that no longer needs to control the direction of your life. This is one of the quiet turning points people rarely talk about. The moment when reflection stops being self-criticism and starts becoming understanding. You begin seeing the younger version of yourself with more patience, not with blame, not with embarrassment, but with context. You realize that person was navigating life with the tools they had, with the awareness they had, with the emotional resources available at the time, and slowly something softens. The past doesn't disappear, but it loses some of its sharp edges, because perspective has changed. And when perspective changes, the emotional meaning of memories often changes. 2. So if you've recently found yourself thinking about your past differently, questioning things you once accepted, seeing patterns you didn't notice before, it may not be a sign that something is wrong. It may simply mean that your understanding of yourself is evolving, that your mind is updating the story, not to trap you in it, but to make space for a more honest version of who you are now. And when that process unfolds slowly, without pressure, without forcing conclusions, it tends to settle naturally. Clarity rarely arrives through urgency. It usually arrives through quiet reflection, through time, through distance, through the simple act of allowing yourself to see things as they are now. And sometimes that shift in perspective is less about the past and more about the person you're becoming, right here, right now, still learning, still adjusting, still growing, at a pace that is entirely your own.